What's up, peeps? Julian Williams here at the distance. Got a video for you guys. This is a post-fight to Carson Jones versus Kell Brook. Bout ended in the decision in favor of Kell Brook. Didn't do a prediction for this one. I thought this was actually going to be next week, but overall, I was very interested in this fight. The undercard had the rematch between Kerry Hope and Gregor Proksa. The rematch, and it was on the undercard of Brook versus Matthew Haddon back in like March. And that was and I was very interested in that fight. That was a pretty good fight. Hope got knocked out at the end of like the 8th round when he got caught at the end of that right hook from Prosa for the European Middleweight Championship. Overall, I did enjoy that fight, but this one was interesting because a lot of people are talking about Kell Brook, saying that he's ready for a title shot, and then even after the performance in this fight, I still think that he is ready for a title shot. I think that all young fighters have to be in fights like these, to be better prepared in the future for championship fights. And Carson Jones came to fight. First off, Kell Brook made a few mistakes in this fight. I know that his nose was broken like in the 7th round, but he did make a few mistakes in the early rounds. First off, he was throwing a lot of feints, and Jones wasn't committing to the feints. Being that he wasn't committing to the feints, he more than likely should have just stepped around and jabbed a lot more. Then he was throwing some unnecessary punches in the early rounds, and also when he was throwing his lead right hand, he dropped his left hand, and Jones was able to time it. So what happened was Brook is continuously throwing feints, and while Jones isn't committing to him, he's just continuously walking forward. And he's continuously standing in front of him and squaring up with him, and throwing his shots. And also on the other hand, while he's dropping his left hand while he's throwing his overhand right, it's getting to the point to where it's telegraphed to where Jones is able to see it coming, and Jones is able to get inside and punch him a little bit, make it a more physical fight than Brook wanted it to be. And those are just a couple things I noticed early in the fight, and also in the first 7 rounds, I don't think Brook clinched all that well. I know in the later rounds he clinched a lot better, but he didn't have a strong clinch, in the first 6, 7 rounds. Probably around 8 or 9, the clinch was a lot different. But in the early goings of the fight, he didn't. I thought he should have clinched a lot better than he was. Excuse me. I thought he should have clinched more so like he was in the later rounds, in the early rounds. So, but overall, I thought Brook held his own in the fight. I thought he did. I thought he won the fight. But you notice in round 7, the tide began to change after he broke his nose. In the early rounds, Brook did well. Fighting off his jab, moving, setting up his shots from angles, using his hand speed, using his foot speed to his advantage. Also, got in between Jones' guard a few times in the early rounds. And like I said, it appeared that his nose broke in like 7 or 8. And when his nose broke, it was a different round. The fight became a different fight. Excuse me. It became a different fight, and Jones just came in and he punished him every chance he got. Every time Jones got close to him, he punished Brook for giving him the opportunity. And what happened was, we ended up with a closer fight than we all imagined it being. More than likely, Jones will not get a rematch. But I think a fight like this raises stock a little bit. Maybe for another up-and-coming fighter. I think Mike Jones and Carson Jones might be a decent fight for an eliminator at IBF or WBO or WBA. I think that would be a interesting eliminator. But it's overall that Kell Brook held his own. He stood in there. He continued the fight. Finished the fight on his feet. And went on from there. I wouldn't say gift decision, though. It was. I thought it was a 7-5, 8-4 kind of fight in favor of Brook, but just overall, I think the fight. I think in my own opinion, I think raised the stock of both fighters. I think Brook is ready for a Randall Bailey. I think he's ready for a Randall Bailey. Not quite ready for like a Devin Alexander or maybe even a Marcos Maidana. but I think he'll hold his own against a limited veteran fighter. I just don't think that Brook is ready to be facing fighters at a beyond a domestic level. And of course, Jones is an American fighter, but I think that Brook, I just still think that Brook has a little more has a few more fights before he's facing, you know, before he's in big championship fights. He's not ready for the Amir Khans. He's not ready for the Devin Alexanders. He's not ready for the Danny Garcias or Marcus Maidanas. But I think he'll still do well at the level that he's fighting at right now. So I think I'll give him another year fighting at that level and then go on from there. So, peace. I'm done. That was The Distance, and thanks for watching. Peace.